Hey, what's going on everybody? Zedd here, bringing you another Soul Calibur 6 video. Today I'm going to be talking about the neutral game. So just real quick as a precursor to this, understand that neutral is just simply a concept and I'm just going to be describing it and demonstrating bits and pieces of it to some degree. Um, Everyone has their own interpretation of what neutral is, how it can be played, what you should be doing, what you should be considering, so on, so on, so on. There's a lot of, you could talk to a lot of different players out there, a lot of different professional fighting game players across so many different fighting games, but there are going to be some underlying facets that are the same. So I'm just going to be talking about all that in my video here. If you disagree with me, that's good. That's a very good thing because that means that your approach to neutral will be different than mine, which means that your playstyle and what you do will be unique to you. So that's a good thing. So do not take my word for gospel. Just use this as an educational source, okay? So just keep that in mind as you go through this video. Don't say you're wrong, Zedd, in the comments. Tell me your thoughts on the matter, because I'm not wrong. This is just my interpretation. There is no right answer. Okay? With that out of the way, let's just get right into it. So, neutral can be described in two different parts, the getting in and staying in, or the getting out and staying out, depending on your character's game plan and you as a player. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to assume the getting in and staying in, simply because it is a little more beginner friendly to understand, and there's not too many characters in Soul Calibur that would benefit from playing a keep out game. Plus, you generally only want to be doing that if you've got a life lead, and a lot of times it's hard to maintain a life lead because of things like soul charge, three-dimensional movement, yada yada. So we're just going to be talking about getting in and staying in, part of the neutral game. So what do I mean by getting in and what do I mean by staying in? Well, we're going to call those phase 1 and phase 2, or part A or part B, whatever you want to call it. Getting in simply means going from where I'm standing to in front of the Siegfried. And staying in, go figure, means staying here in front of the Siegfried and applying my pressure. So let's get the first topic out of the way, movement. So movement in Soul Calibur, being a three-dimensional game, is a lot different than, say, a 2D game where you only have to worry about 4 and 6. In Soul Calibur, all of a sudden you have to worry about all the directions, horizontals, verticals, yada yada. There's a lot of different movement tricks out there that you can do. You could totally look it up. There's a great video out there by Signia. He's a North American Yoshi player. And he goes into a lot of depth about movement, but I can kind of give you the Cole's notes here. Essentially, it's that you can cancel any form of step with sidestep, and you can cancel any form of step with forward step, with the exception of back step. So what do I mean by that? Is you can't cancel 4 with 6. It's not really going to work. So instead, what you need to do is you have to do 4, 3, 6, right? Like this. Or if it's easier for you to think about, 4, 2, 6. Right? Or semicircle, even. If you're playing on a hitbox, semicircle is a little easier to do. So on, so on. And box step refers to back step, side step, so 4, 2. And again, you can cancel that pretty much right away. And then 4, 2, 6. 4, 2, 6, you can just start running in again. In terms of like sidestep, a lot of times when you sidestep, you can't block right away, right? But if you want to block right away, you can just 2-6G. Right, like that. So that's just some unique ways of moving. There's a whole lot more, and it is character specific, but those are just some examples, okay, that you can play around with. So that's what I'm talking about with movement. Now, your objective here is to get within your effective range. Now, for the sake of Changhua, our effective range is approximately range 1 to 1.5, because then our AA isn't very viable from here at range 1.5, but at range 1, our AA becomes legit, and then up close, our animations are a little harder to differentiate. Plus, full crouch 3A has a lot more range than you think it does, but at the same time, it is easy enough to whiff on accident, right? So we want to get in range from moves like full crouch 3A, 3A, 4K, 4-6, 3B, full crouch 3B, 2-2B is another good one, and of course 5AA and 4B. So those are all really good moves, and that's kind of the range you want to play at with Changhua specifically, but each character is going to be different. Okay, so that's our objective, is to get from here to our effective range. So some of the things to consider are you want to be somewhat erratic with your movement. You never want to be staying in the same place at one time or for very long. And you want to try to get in a habit of like step guarding, even if you don't really have to. And the reason why is it's just a good habit, right? So just kind of G after all of your movement techniques, whatever you're doing. And the reason why is because when you start doing things like this, see this? 4-3-6-G. You can start being really weird because then all of a sudden you just break out into a dash and you whiff punish when you want to, right? Or 2-1-4-2-4, 2-4-2-4 guard, right? Things like that. Just getting in the habit of guarding is a good tip. So that's the first tip I have for you in neutral. Second, don't just run up in a straight line. Now, I know you can cancel forward dash with block like this, but it doesn't mean it's a very good idea. And the reason why is because it makes moves that have some kind of sidestep advancement built into them. So for example, moves like this, right? 1B, just as a brief example, or even 6-6B, right? It's going to make things like this a little more awkward to do if you yourself are moving up like this. If you're doing like walk up, block, 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 block. So you want to try to move in with, 3s or 9s. That way you can also avoid some verticals at the same time, and you're good to go. Okay, so don't just walk in a straight line. Not a very good idea. The third thing that I want to mention is it's important to understand the opponent's effective range as well. So for the purposes of the video, I selected Siegfried here. So you've got a few moves to consider with Siegfried. A slide B, right? Then you've got 3A4, and then you've got AGA, right? Those are the different moves that you're going to have to keep in mind in the neutral game against Siegfried, or rather 2 of the moves you're going to have to keep in mind. So for sake of simplicity and understanding, let's just talk about 3A4. So when you're playing against a Siegfried in general, who's playing keep away, 3A4 is a great move to try to bait. Now, for the record, if you're playing Xianghua, you can just PXS under it, right? So that's nice, but let's just assume we're not, right? So you're trying to get in, you're like, oh, my opening's there, oh, now I'm shoved away. Well, what you can do there is if you block it, right? Oh, there you go. You got run counter, now I'm being thrown away. What you can do is you can take advantage of the block stun, or the negative frames rather, and you can use that to move in, right? Or if it's a move like, say, A slide B into K, and you're almost there, but he does A slide B into K, and you sidestep, right? So you can, if we're trying to bait this, then what you can do is you can, properly sidestep or backstep, sidestep, and you're ready to go. But for 3A4, it's a bit trickier, right? See, it's not that easy. Instead, what you need to do is you got to play at like mid-range, and then, try to force a whiff this way, and then run in. So if I was playing around here, right, there we go. Playing around here, there we go. Playing around here, there we go. Right. So understanding the opponent's effective moves at different ranges is a very important thing to do, and it is worth labbing. And even just like I was doing here, just set a move 3A4, and you just stand there. You're like, I think it's about here with a micro step. Yes. Okay, good. Now can I get closer? Say you fuck it up. No, I can't. So things like that, right? It's important to learn these various concepts. The next thing with the neutral game in general is try not to be too antsy with your buttons, and try not to use advancing verticals too often, because the opponent is also going to be moving. We're not hitting a stationary target, right? We're hitting an opponent who, like us, is also trying to move and play neutral. So if you start using advancing verticals all the time with maybe more linear hitboxes, then you're just opening yourself up to getting thrown, punished, whiff punish, whatever. So be careful with that. Also be careful with moves that are, say, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it, but careful with tech jumps and tech crouches, because the thing with tech crouches as an approach tool is sometimes a lot of them can screw you over, or if you're playing against characters with crouch throws, that's a problem. Sometimes if it's a check jump, then you might be swatted out of the air even worse than what it would have been had you just taken it normally or blocked it, right? So if we try jumping against this, we're being yeeted to the other side of the map, right? So that's not really a good situation. So I wouldn't want to use moves like B slide A, for example, or 8B plus K if I'm just playing, if I'm just playing neutral and waiting for a whiff opportunity. Because if I do that and then not too fast, and I get swatted away, right? So careful with jumps, especially. Tech crouches you can get away with, but I would usually suggest using a tech crouch that is a horizontal attack in general. It's just going to do you more good than a tech crouching vertical attack in the neutral game, in my opinion. So say you're in, right? Say you've worked your way in. Oh, and lastly, just be patient, right? Like wait for the whiff opportunity, wait for him to just miss it, right? And then take your opportunity when it presents itself, yeah? So just be patient. So let's say you get in, right? So he whiffed his 3A4 and you're in. Well, now what? So don't always think that punishing it is always the best play. Now, there are some moves that you will be able to get like run-in hits. For example, maybe all you get is, I don't know, like a run-in 5AA, right? That may not be worth it. Instead, take the plus frames or the whiff frames, if you want to call them that, and use it to do something else. Use it for setup purposes. Sometimes going for the punish isn't even optimal because if you're a character like, say, Yoshimitsu, his 4B, it's 12 frames minus 12, but it's also minus on hit, and he takes the soul, and then it's not really that great of a situation for him. So instead, you can use your frames to run in and stay in and set up something else. So for example, I'll show you what I'm talking about. If I'm playing Xianghua, I can go for a 4-4A hold. Well, now I get extended pressure, right? I maybe even catch the GI, right? Things like that. He might duck for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe he thinks it's 1A, just for example, right? Or even you could run in if you're playing a character like, say, I don't know, Cassandra, right? Cassandra, instead of just punishing right away, you could get in and you could set up like the 1B hold, right? Or you could set up a, something else. Or you could even use a guard breaker if you're playing like Taki, right? She can use her bomb on their feet and use that instead of just taking the really, really low amount of damage that you might get, right? It just depends on your character, so it's hard for me to say for certain because it is all dependent on you, your playstyle, your preference, the situation, your character, yada yada. Like that might be something I consider if I'm, if I have Siegfried at the wall, because, instead I want to look for his GI and then, go for the wall combo, right? That's what I want to try to do. But in the neutral game, yeah, okay, sure. Maybe I do just, he whiffs it, and then I go for my full punish, right? So on, so on, so on. So you're in. Those are some things that's the first thing to consider is what do you want to do with the time that you just got by getting in, okay? The second thing to consider once you're in is how do you stay in? What are you going to do to stay in? So this is where creativity comes into play, especially with short range characters, is you got to find a way to get your opponent to respect what you're doing and to just run the show and not have them create any space between you. You want to have it so the opponent's only method of creating space between you and them is to soul charge, right? That is your goal at the end of the day, is to apply enough pressure to force the soul charge. That is a win for you as an offensive player. That means, as a short range character rather, that means you did your job, now do it again, right? And then do it again and again. And if he doesn't have any meter, what's he gonna do? He's probably gonna start randomly REing, GIing, things like that. Like it's a snowbally effect when it comes to applying good pressure sequences. And the only way you can apply good pressure sequences is if you yourself come up with creative ways to do so. So for example, say you're sitting in the lab and you come up with this grand string of attacks that you're like, man, this is so good. Like for example, right? Let's say I do 4B, 4B, 3A, 2K, Wall Rising K, 3K, right? And you're like, man, that looks really sick. Well, and yeah, sure, there were a few frame traps in there, but all of that, you can't just keep doing that, right? You're gonna have to change it up. So maybe next time I do 4B, 4BA, right? If you tried to step the third attack. Or maybe I do 4B, 4B, 3A, 4A hold, right? Things like that. You want to try to change it up. Find your character's good buttons when they're in and stay in, but play around with them, right? See what works for you. Now, if you have a horizontal mid, a lot of characters, it's their 3A. For Xianghua, it's not. Her 3A is a low. So for the purposes of the video, I'm just going to use 4A. If you have a Hori mid, this is how you're going to be checking step, or tech crouching sidestep. For example, Sophidia and Yoshi, they have sidestep tech ducking moves, very powerful. But you can get around that by using a horizontal mid attack. So horizontal mids will keep them from going side to side, therefore forcing them to go front and back. Then once you start doing that, you can start pressuring with things like verticals, right? Then by doing that, they're going to want to use GI and RE or sidestep again. Now if they start GIing, and you're gonna know, because you can do one of two things. You can either keep running your cycles and keep doing your thing until they GI you, or you can anticipate it or read it or evaluate the situation. For example, again, you're able to GI the on block, the follow-ups to 6BB, or 6B, sorry. I'm just going to use this as an example. So you can GI the 6BB, you can GI the 6BA. So maybe you as a player, you're like, you know, I don't even want to flex it right away. Let's see what they're going to do. So you flex 6B, right? That's all you do. And then maybe the response that you end up getting is they GI'd, and you're like, aha. So now you get to do things like that, right? Or, aha, they GI'd. Then we do this. Or if they're reversal edging, reverse edge, right? Aha, right? So it's up to you what you want to do. You can either commit right away, you can be like, yeah, 6BB. Or you can pause and wait and see what they do. Other things to do when you're in is if you want to start making reads, you can start using moves like tech crouches, so 2As, right? That'll check the step really quick. It'll stuff a lot of anti-pressure tools, puts you into full crouch usually, if not always, and it tech ducks. Or 2K. Pretty much the same concept. You can start using moves like tech jumps as well, if you've got a good jumping attack. For example, Nightmare 9K, very good. Yoshi 9K, very good. You know, things like that. Cervantes 3K, that's a great check. Maxi 3K, that's a great check. Things like this, right? So you're going to find these sort of check attacks. For me, it'd be like 2A, 3A, 4B. This is a great check, right? It does depend on your character and what you're trying to accomplish. But the point is, once you're in, your goal is to stay in. So try not to be super negative and try not to go for things that are massively whiff punishable. But of course, you have to remember that the defender is also trying to either take their turn, or if you're a character like, say, Ivy or Mina, you want to recreate that space. You know that's their objective, and so you need to learn how they go about doing so. Now, in Siegfried's case, or like Mitsurugi, Aswell, all those characters, they're pretty comfortable playing in this range because Siegfried can make reads of his own with iframes to verticals on these moves, and then permanent auto GI against horizontals from base hold, right? So a Siegfried is also able to counterplay your offense, which is why seeing what they do and learning their tendencies is very important in general in fighting games, but especially in the neutral game and getting in. And it's a very important component to staying in as well. Now, if your character is susceptible to backstep, like say Yoshi, Maxi, Xianghua, even Talim, sometimes Taki, depending on the situation, then you have to keep that in mind as well. For example, if I start doing things like 3A, this is very easily steppable at like a 1.5 range. What I mean by 1.5 is 1 character and a half length away, right? Very easily steppable, backsteppable into full punish. So the way that I combat this is during my pressure sequences, if I want to go for a 3A, what you can do is you can actually quickly dash up and then, right? Just a single dash in, 3A. And if you do like 6-5 3A, you're not going to get 6-6A, right? You can even cut it shorter. Because again, remember, you can cancel a front step or a side step with anything. Or cancel anything with a side step and a front step with anything. Right, so like that, right? So you can add a little more range to your attacks by doing just a little dash, right? Nothing serious, just a little one. And then if you start implementing techniques like that, then all of a sudden the opponent gets a little worried, and then I can do micro step crouch throw, or I can do micro step full crouch 3B, or you know, micro step guard 3B. Like you can start mixing in buttons like that. The entire game's design is your playground or your canvas, and it's your job to paint your picture, right? So some players like to play high risk. That's cool. So your character might have options like Talim, right? Or Maxi or Astaroth. You're gonna have to make those callouts when you're in their face. Like I'm gonna go for this. I'm gonna go for that, and you just gotta commit, right? Whereas characters like say Xianghua or Cassandra, they can kind of be a little more annoying, a bit safer. They're a bit better at staying in as opposed to taking risks, things like that. So it does depend a bit on your character in general. To kind of put it into an analogy or context for you, I'm going to use the analogy that Axel Boom uses, a competitive multi-main guy. He plays Yoshi, Raph, and Baldo right now. I like the way he words it the most. So he says, playing Soul Calibur is like having a conversation with someone. If the conversation is flowing smoothly, that means you're getting predictable. Your tendencies are showing, or likewise for your opponent too. And things are getting a little too obvious, right? GI spots are obvious, 2A spots are obvious, backstep, sidestep, you name it, whatever. It's when you start saying things to your counterpart or your opponent that are jarring, where you're not going to get the reaction you want. If I said, how's the weather? Your response was burgers, right? That kind of takes me aback. Or if I said, what's your favorite color? And you're like, fork. I'm like, okay, so silver. And now I'm confused and asking questions. If you can get your opponent confused and asking questions, now you're winning the game. Or if you can get your opponent super confused as to what the heck you're trying to say, or in the context of Soul Calibur, what the heck you're trying to do, you're winning the game. You're going to get them panicking. Things like Panic GI, RE, Soul Charge, maybe even CE if you're like a Talim or IV, Zaslamel, whatever, right? So it's about being awkward and don't be too predictable. Now, when I say awkward, I don't mean don't wild out, like don't be like doing this, right, all the time. If that's your strategy, whatever. That's cool, man, but I don't suggest it for everybody. So that's not what I mean. Or I don't mean going for like, 7A or that's not what I mean. I don't mean wilding out doing bad shit. What I mean is just don't be predictable. So, if I'm up in his face, I'm going to try my best not to use like 3A as often as I normally would, right? For example, or try not to spam full crouch 3A. Just keep it in the back of your mind. Or spots where you have been using full crouch 3A, maybe try flexing full crouch 3B, right? Things like that. Or maybe spice it up with a bit of 1K, right? Things like that. Keep the opponent guessing. That's how you stay in. That's how you stay in. And to get in, the key piece of advice I give anybody is you have to be patient. Be patient. I see so many lower level players or mid-level players. They have the potential, they have the want, and they have the knowledge. But what they're doing is they're like, fuck, we've been walking around doing nothing for like 12 seconds. Screw this, I'm going in. Right? And that's how you start losing games. Right? Don't be impatient. If you get a life lead, just roll with it, man. If I have a life lead as Xianghua, I'm out here doing stuff like this all day. I'm not coming to you. You're coming to me, dog. Like that ain't my game. So, you can play neutral your way. Those are just, I know it's pretty prolonged, and if you found it confusing, then it's probably just not, you're probably just not there yet. Now, I don't mean that as an insult to you. I just mean where you are in terms of your skill at Soul Calibur probably just isn't quite to the level where it matters yet. But That's just my 2 cents on the neutral. It's like an awkward conversation, as Boom says. And I really like that analogy, so I'm going to start using that as well. Shoutouts to Boom. Uh, very, very good player. But yeah, so to kind of summarize, there's 2 stages of neutral: getting in and staying in, or getting out and staying out, depending on your character. To get in, use movement, bait whiff punishes, so on, so on. So again, if we're doing this, I'm looking for 3A4, right? Let's just say that is the one move on Siegfried that I'm keeping in mind. Well, I'm going to look for it, and I'm going to try to punish it or to get in off of that move, right? Or like Ivy, you're looking for 6-6A hold. You're looking for B6. Against Songmina, you're looking for 6A 1B, right? Cervantes, A6, IGDR, don't whiff, right? Things like that, right? Just to list a few examples. So, and then stage 2, get in and stay in. If you have a horizontal mid, that's a fantastic way to stay in and force the opponent to respect you. If you've got a faster one, like a lot of 3As, Mitsurugi 3A, Yoshi 3A, Cassandra 3A, 6-6A, Sophidia 6-6A. There's so many. There's so many good ones out there, right? Geralt 3A is a fantastic Hori mid. It advances from like here. You're going to hit them, right? Fantastic move. So find out how to stay in. Try not to mash. Try to make callouts as well when you're staying in here and there. Like, oh, he's going to GI here. All right, I'm going to go for more delayed attack, or I'm going to flex my A+B every so often, right? Things like that. Don't be impatient. If you take anything away from this video, it's don't be impatient and try to exert patience, and you will all of a sudden improve in the neutral game. Okay? If you have any specific questions or comments, concerns, whatever, shoot them in the comments down below and I will respond to you as I always do. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.